Hey guys, it's springtime. Mountains are calling. I know you're itching to get out there on the trail. Another thing that's happening in the springtime is all that snow on the mountains starting to melt. And with that melting snow, we get higher river levels. And undoubtedly at some point while you're backpacking, you're going to come to a water crossing. So let's talk a little bit about that today. Now on YouTube, people make water crossings look like a cinematic splash. But the reality is that may be the most dangerous 30 feet of your entire trip. So today we're not talking about gear, we're talking about the physics of not dying. We're covering why your hip belt is a trap, why a wet log is a greased pole, and when the smartest thing to do is just turn around and go home. Now, before you even touch that water, you need to test it. So, if you throw a stick in the water and it's moving faster than you can walk, the current's a little too fast for you to be even attempting to cross. And also, when looking for a place to cross, don't cross at a bend in the river. At these bends, the water creates undercuts and deep scour holes. So instead of trying to cross at a bend, look for a straight section, preferably something where the water braids, meaning where it splits into several channels, which are going to be a little less deep and easier to cross. Generally, where the river narrows, it's going to be swifter and deeper. So if the water is split into wider channels, generally it's going to be a little easier to cross there instead of being a super narrow fire hose. And also think about the time of day. Late in the afternoon, the water is going to be higher because throughout the day, the snow is melting and that water starts to rage even more. If you come to a crossing and it doesn't seem safe and it's late in the afternoon, consider making camp. Wake up in the morning, you're going to find that that water level is a lot lower as it gets colder overnight. I experienced this on the Timberline Trail when I came to a water crossing late in the afternoon that wasn't safe to cross. First thing in the morning, not a problem. And as you're scoping out that crossing, if you notice that you hear clattering along the bottom of that river or stream, you'll know that the current is swift enough to move rocks, which might make you want to kind of go look for some other place to cross, because that current is going to feel a lot stronger once you step into it. And as you're looking for a place to cross, don't just look at the place you're crossing at, look downstream. If you have a slip or a fall, whatever is downstream is what you're going to encounter. So you want to look for things like strainers, which are areas in the water that allows water to go through, but nothing else. So branches hanging down into the water, logs, log jams, rocks, waterfalls. Anything downstream from you is a potential hazard if you slip and fall. So think of the river as a conveyor belt. If you slip and fall, where's it going to take you? Definitely look for hazards downstream. So if you see a log jam in the current down below where you're trying to cross, look for somewhere else to cross, just in case. Now, sometimes the best way to cross the water is not in the water. But if you're going to try to make a dry crossing, make sure you're prepared. Now, we all want to keep our feet dry, but keep in mind that rock hopping, that's where about 90% of trail injuries actually happen. So if we're going to do that, which, let's face it, all of us have, think about a few things before you do it. First, the ice factor. Now, I'm not talking about actual ice, although if it's freezing out, that's going to be a problem for those rocks out there in the middle of the river. But what I'm talking about is that some of these rocks are going to be covered with algae or sludge. And some of them that have been worn down in the river over time are going to be super smooth. So any of those wet rocks is potentially going to send you hurtling down into the water on your ass. So scope them out, look really closely. If there's dry rocks out there, those are going to be the safer bet by far. But also keep in mind that just because a rock is large doesn't mean it's necessarily anchored. That moving current is also moving rocks. And as the smaller rocks underneath shift and move, it also makes some of those bigger rocks unstable. So more often than not, if you're doing a rock hopping crossing, you are going to find that at least one of those rocks is very likely to shift as you go. So be prepared. And if you have to make a big, long leap, it might be time to consider just stepping right into the water and getting your boots wet. Because launching yourself onto a large rock that suddenly shifts is very likely to cause you injury and potentially drowning. So when is it a good idea? Actually, most of the time. You're going to have shorter water crossings, maybe 3 to 10 feet wide. You're going to find that a lot of those rocks are dry because the water is shallow. A lot of them are flat. And absolutely try to keep your boots dry if you have that opportunity. And I'm as guilty as anyone for coming to a section where I need to stick a landing to get to the other side. And probably 50% of the time, I've landed on the bank and gone straight down into the water. So if you're gonna rock hop, just scope it out first, think it through, and like I said, look at those hazards downstream. And more often than not, you're gonna have dry boots and continue on your journey. And then remember that you forgot to filter water at that stream crossing. I'm gonna be honest, besides rock hopping, the most common way people try to cross over a water crossing is over a fallen log. And we've all done it. But before you cross a log over water trying to keep your feet dry, look for a few things. Is the log smooth? Is it covered with bark? Are there tons of branches you're going to have to navigate around? Does it look like other people have used this log before? Is it dry or is it wet? A wet log is going to be tremendously slippery. Sometimes the best way to cross a log over water is not to tightrope it, but to scoot across on your butt. And while it might look silly, generally that's going to be the safest way to get across. Also consider how high up that log is. Now, I was on a trip coming back from Sacagawea Peak across what's called Hurricane Creek. And I had previously crossed at a different time of year, and it was an easy crossing. But this time the water was much higher, and the only place I could find to cross was a log. And the log was about 5 feet up in the air, and it was wet. And downstream from the log was a bend with a log jam. And I thought really long and hard, trying to figure out if I could get across that to keep my feet dry. And after sitting and thinking a little bit, I realized that wet boots were a lot more acceptable than being dead. So if you're going to cross on a log, look at the hazards. If you fall off of that log, what's going to happen? Think about that before you cross. And speaking of natural bridges, certain times of year you're going to find snow bridges over the water. This is where the snow has fallen and created a natural bridge. And just know that while sometimes these are safe to cross over, you're never going to necessarily know if it's going to collapse or if you're going to fall through. I highly recommend avoiding snow bridges. While they may feel like concrete in the morning, as that sun comes out, it's going to make everything softer. And once again, keeping your boots dry isn't worth your life. Now, if you know you're going to have some challenging water crossings, I highly recommend using trekking poles. Now, not everybody uses trekking poles, but you are going to find these tremendously helpful if you have a challenging water crossing. So when you're crossing, those trekking poles are going to be your third and fourth legs. When you cross, face upstream and lean slightly forward. Move your trekking poles first, get a solid plant, and then step sideways. Imagine shuffling like a crab. I also tend to move slightly upstream as I'm going across. Again, making sure that those trekking poles are planted firmly before every step. And before you cross, unbuckle everything. That hip belt, sternum strap, unbuckle all of your buckles, anything that's going to hold that backpack to you if you fall. Because if you do fall in swift water with that backpack, you're much more likely to drown. And while losing your backpack would be super unfortunate, having it hold you underwater until you die would be much more unfortunate. So always unbuckle those straps. Now there's some debate about whether or not to take those shoes or boots off when you're crossing. I highly recommend not crossing barefoot. Any rocks are going to be super slick. You're not going to have a grip on those. You're much more likely to fall. Now, if you have camp shoes or dedicated water shoes, you can certainly change into those. So what do you do with your boots or shoes? Traditionally, I have tied the laces together and hung them over my shoulders. Now, the problem with that is, potentially, if I were to fall, those shoelaces or boot laces could wrap around my neck and I could be getting strangled while I'm trying not to drown. So keep that in mind if that's something you want to do. It would probably be a lot safer and smarter, if you're going to do that, to drape them over your backpack right behind the shoulders, so that if the pack comes off, those will go with it instead of going around your neck, although there is still that potential. So what about crossing in your boots or your trail runners? That's probably the safest bet. And I'd say the biggest concern there for most backpackers is then hiking in wet boots and socks. And yes, maybe you're a little more prone to getting blisters if you do that, but I will say it's usually the safest way to go. And on a hot day, those are going to dry out eventually. If your trail runners are not waterproof, they're actually going to dry out faster. Waterproof is great for keeping water out, but when you're crossing a stream, that water's just going right down inside of them, and then they take forever to dry. Now, if you're on a group trip, you can use that to your advantage when doing water crossings. Now, one thing you can do is have somebody use that crab shuffle method to get across, pulling a line behind them and then securing that to a tree. And then you can use that line one by one to help guide you across. Another method that people use in particularly challenging crossings is a tripod method. In this case, 3 hikers or more place their arms on the shoulders of one another and shuffle across like that, giving each other added stability since you have more legs in the water. The trail isn't going anywhere. If the water is above your knees and moving fast, that's where the trail ends for you today. There's no shame in turning back if getting where you're going is risking your life. Backpacking's a long game, so don't let 30 feet of water end your entire season before it even starts. Be smart with water crossings, and if that's something you're not comfortable with at all, do a little research before you plan your trips. Make sure the places you're going has bridges or doesn't cross the water at all. So hopefully, if you're new to backpacking, some of this was helpful to you today. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next week.